So with the next DLC for Way of the Hunter finally announced, Tikamoon Plains, I thought it would be a good time to go back and revisit the other 3 maps and kind of develop a guide of sorts. So that's what we're going to be doing today and over the next few weeks. I figured we would develop a viable loadout for that map, and when I say viable, I mean something that's going to pretty much take every species from 6 to tier 1. On that same line of thinking, we're going to look at the collars and equip the right ones for the area we are going into. You may have to swap out a few, and we'll get into that as we develop that loadout. And once we feel pretty solid with the tools we're going to be using, we're going to take a look at the map in order to find a couple hotspots. And when I say hotspots, I'm going to be looking at multiple species in a 1 kilometer distance. So we're going to be looking at something like, oh yeah, we have a fox, we have gray wolves, we have Sitka, and we have moose, and then we also have black bear. Something that kind of ranges from tier 6 all the way down to at least tier 3. Doing that will make sure that the spot we have chosen is going to stay fairly active throughout the entire day and not really fall off into some dead zone right when everyone is going to sleep. At the end, we are gonna go through a map breakdown and give it an overall rating and just go through my personal take on the map and why I believe it deserves that rating. For the rating system, we're gonna keep it simple and just do a best to worst style list. And worst doesn't mean like the map is completely unplayable. It really just means that it's not the map that I'm gonna go to every day if I had to choose one map. I'll work through why I feel that way and bring you along, so let's go ahead and get into building this loadout. For the primary weapon, I really want something that's going to be tier 6 and tier 5 viable, meaning I want to be able to go into these herds and pretty much be able to walk out with anything from almost any distance. Now, I have covered this weapon before, and I really feel like the best weapon to do this job is going to be the 270. There are a lot of options you could use on this map, and some might actually prefer the 7mm 08 rim, the Steyr Pro Hunter 2, and that's totally viable as well. You're just gonna have to be careful on those further shots because the energy does fall off quite a bit and you might not get the penetration to actually take that animal. In my opinion, I think the 308 win is a little more viable than the 7mm just because it actually can get out to those further distances with that energy that you need. So for my 2 recommendations, the first one's going to be the 270. I have taken out plenty of bison, moose, you name it. It has been dropped with this rifle. And then if you're not a fan of that one, I would recommend the Steyr monoblock, the 308 win. That's another really good rifle for this map, and you'll be able to take anything almost at any distance for tier 5 and tier 6. When we are thinking about our secondary though, we do gotta think about the smaller game species, and for Aurora Shores we only have 2 of the tier 3 species, and then the rest are gonna be hanging out in the tier 1 list. Right now the 16 gauge is completely broken, the Bosner and Klein standard. So that one is a huge recommendation. I mean, it is just slapping birds from 200 plus meters, so that one is definitely a viable option right now. You can also take down deer with this rifle, or I mean shotgun. It's a nice over-under, it's beautiful, I really love the look of it. So I definitely recommend that one, and if it does get fixed before you find this video, then I would definitely suggest you just use the buffed-in Apex Predator. Because even though if you check on the toolkit, it does say that the energy is really low for tier 3 and tier 4 animals, it's actually very viable because the jewels that it is packing is on a blade instead of a projectile. So it's actually got a cutting edge, and it makes the jewels need less energy to actually make the penetration, and you actually have a heavier projectile as well. So it's just a basic physics thing. You don't really need all that much to make it through the animal that you're hunting. Personally, I think the crossbow is completely insane. It's so viable throughout the entire species list. It's just something that you really shouldn't leave home without. So if that 16 gauge gets fixed, you can bet that this is where my secondary is going to be resting. For the glass that I would put on these weapons, you can use the 3 to 18 by 44. I would probably use the Overguard long range 3 to 15 by 55. Just a way better sight picture. I mean, the reticle is not so massive and thick that you can't really tell on those long shots where you're going to be going. And then for the crossbow, I really like the higher magnification. The like little red dot doesn't really suit me too much, so I'd go with the Zoom XD True Sight, the 1.525 by 32. That one really seems to suit me really well, and I actually nailed that Surf's Up mission with that scope equipped. The binos are going to be pretty straightforward. The Overguard 8 by binos, and then the Bushnell 10 by 42 binos. Those are basically the only ones that we have. So those are the only ones that we're going to be using. The third slot is definitely going to be filled in this next DLC. So let's hope they give us one or two to kind of pick through and decide what we like to use. On to the collars. Now we are going to take a look at the Key Predator collar. It's probably one of the better collars to use just because you can actually discern from low fitness and high fitness animals, and it pretty much attracts every predator, so there's no reason not to use it. It's just, it helps you log the animals if you're just logging, and then if you're just hunting, it really helps you not take something that is extremely high fitness if you're busting that low fitness call. There is another collar that I like to use in this slot, and it's the Jackrabbit Predator collar. It pretty much attracts every predator, but it also attracts hares as well. So it kind of just extends what you can hunt. But you have to be careful, and you really have to look at what you're hunting and know what group of animals you're hunting in, because it doesn't really discern from low in fitness like the Key Predator collar would. So you're going to have to be extra careful. The next one is going to be the Primo's Big Bucks Rattling Bag. It's going to attract the barren ground caribou and the sika in Aurora Shores. So that gives you the deer species pretty much covered. I know it's not going to really give you much, but it does cover those too. So you'll be able to pull those guys in when you find yourself in those situations. The first gear slot I kind of use to go back and forth between styles of hunt. So I will use a moose collar or a elk collar. From time to time I'll just switch back and forth, and then I'll also use the duck collar in this slot as well whenever I want to go out and get into some birds. It does really depend on how you like to hunt, the weapons you're going to want to throw into these slots, and the collars you're going to want to use as well. You're pretty much locked into the binos, which is unfortunate, but hopefully we will see a change here shortly. Now let's take a look at the map. There's a bunch of really good spots in Aurora Shores. That's the nice thing about having this small map, is that these species are just packed in here, and we're really going to be able to find some good spots to hunt within that 1 mile range that I was talking about earlier. The first spot I want to go ahead and mention is right outside the main cabin doors. If you start heading south down that riverbed, you are going to get into a lot of different animals. We have bison, bear, moose, gray wolves, we have some snowshoe hares, we even have some sika and some caribou that visit just right outside of your cabin. So that's the first spot I'm going to go ahead and throw in, is going to be this main valley here. You can use any of these stands, or you can just perch up on one of these hills and just look around. Just take your time. You will find stuff. I have pulled a couple 5 stars out of this exact area. The second hotspot area I would like to point out is going to be to the east of the Rustowick grasslands. That river valley right there has a lot of animals as well. You have ducks, surf scooter, you have lesser scaup, fox, caribou, all the way up to bison and elk in that area. And it's a hot spot for caribou, and then you'll even find some bear there. It's really a nice spot if you want to just set up on a hill and take a couple shots at things, or even just look around to see what is there. Then we're gonna head over here to this campsite south of the Pine Bolt Range. I like this spot as well. It's very open and you have a lot of critters in here. You have black bear all the way up to moose and Roosevelt elk, so that's a really nice spot to hunt. It's pretty sparse as far as trees go, so you can really see what's in there. It's one of my favorite spots, and actually where I took that 255 meter crossbow shot on an elk. Just keep in mind, if you fast travel to that campsite, you are going to have to back up a little bit to get anything to spawn at that lake. But otherwise, it's a really solid spot. The next one is going to be in the Tikamoon Plains, right outside of that campsite to the west. That spot over there is amazing. It's got a crazy amount of goats and caribou and wolves, as well as snowshoe hares. And if you look on the opposite side of that valley, you will actually see moose, Roosevelt elk, and bison as well. So it really gives you a good list of animals to hunt there. Going along with that one, I would go ahead and toss in big wart tails as well. That whole river valley right there is just loaded with critters. You might find less as you get closer to the Rustowick grasslands, but really it is just loaded. For the last hotspot, I kind of feel like this is more of an honorary mention, but we're gonna go ahead and look out towards the west of the main cabin. This river valley over here is pretty loaded. It does have a lot of bison and caribou and moose, as well as it does get visited by some black bear and then some fox and snowshoe hares. And I find this spot really nice because it's so open and it's just beautiful over here. So I'm going to go ahead and give that an honorary mention. Go ahead and check out that valley as well if you're looking for some good hunting. So that does it for the hotspots. I'm quickly looking over the map once again, and that makes about 6 good spots that you can get into almost every tier of species on this map. I did want to go ahead and take a look at some lesser hotspots as well. So pretty much anywhere on the north side of the map, you're going to be able to get into at least 3 species: gray wolf, caribou, and mountain goat. So that's going to be a pretty good spot to hunt if you're not wanting to trudge through all the forest. The next spot I want to go ahead and mention is actually on the rainforest down here on Kodiak Island. I cannot pronounce that name, but if you go to the west side of the island, the Sitka and the Roosevelt and the Kodiak over there are just amazing to hunt. It's so awesome with the little potholes everywhere that the hunt is just incredible, and you can see a lot, call a lot of stuff in. The action's just always happening, and especially right there at that main cabin on Kodiak Island, there's pretty much always action going on here. Even though they don't have a whole lot of different species, the stuff is going on here, so I'm going to go ahead and make that one of the lesser hotspots. Then for the next one, I'm going to say the Antler Highlands. The reason I say that is not because it doesn't have a lot of species, but because it's such a hard hunt. It is so thick over there that you can't really see things when they are resting, and getting into that spot and getting a good hunt in, from what I have experienced, is just not that easy. Another spot I really find super thick with trees is just that north side of that slope on the long-nosed tips, the highland forest. It is so thick on that northern slope that making all the drink times and everything for the bison and the moose, it's just so hard to hunt. So my suggestion would be to actually try and hunt on a feed time where they are actually like cruising the pastures or up on the side of the hill, and then post up on the other side of the hill and look over that way. I've definitely seen gray wolf, caribou, bison, moose of course, and then red fox and snowshoe hare. So it can be a good spot to hunt. It's just so difficult with how thick it is that most of your shots are gonna, either require you to call or for you to back off pretty far to where you can actually see them. So just as a precautionary tale though, there's a couple places that I would totally avoid and just dead zones in this map pretty much. And that is going to be the Pine Bolt Range. I just feel like that place is completely dead sometimes. It's so quiet, I don't hear anything around there until I'm almost to Figwort Tails, so I really just wouldn't even bother with that place other than to unlock the cabin and maybe just cruise it to unlock the map really. The next place that I just wouldn't ever travel is that Nyanuk Rise up towards that viewpoint up there. Totally dead. Anything on that northeastern side, there's just nothing up there at all. So walking through that can be kind of a nuisance. And lastly, one of the hardest hunts I've found myself on is on the south side of the Kodiak Island. It is just so thick and there's so many rolling hills over there that most of my shots have been under 150 meters, and they've required calling and a lot of patience. So going on that side of the mountains, definitely make sure that you have some time on your hands. When I was thinking about rating this map, I kind of started to think about two different things here, and I started to think about what is my personal taste, and then what is the player base of this game gonna like, because it's not all about me, right? So what I really decided is that this map is probably going to be the best map for Way of the Hunter right now. That may be a controversial statement, but I think it's pretty clear with the size of the map and the density of all the animals that you just get into more hunts on this map than anywhere else. And for a new player coming off a game like Call of the Wild, that kind of experience is gonna really help to usher in your desire to come back to this game. With how active it is on any of those main valleys that I pointed out, and the increase in animal vocalization, it is just so noisy all the time that people are gonna be able to get into whatever kind of hunt they desire. It has a lot of fast travel locations, and a lot of the fast travel locations are very close to a parking lot, so you're going to be able to switch out your weapons fairly easily as well. The landscape offers a little bit of everything from the highland forest all the way down to the sparse valley floors. I think it has a really good balance, and it will keep players actively looking throughout the entire map for animals. Just make sure you steer clear of those spots that I mentioned earlier. Yet if you do find yourself up there, try to be patient and happy hunting. That's gonna do it for this one. I hope it helps in some way, especially with that new player base as we get ready for the Africa map. If you're not subscribed and want to see more content like this, make sure you smash that button, hit the like to make this thing noticeable, and as always, have a good day.